A little bit more than 2 years ago, I installed this plywood flooring, and while the installation went well and I was pleased with the results, I had a problem with the finish that I used. Even though I used the exact same products that I used in the past, the results were radically different. And while I wouldn't consider myself a perfectionist by any stretch, this has been bugging me for the past 2 years, and I would really like to change it. And so I've kind of settled on one particular solution, but the other one is to try to refinish this as it is. And so I decided to take the time to see what the results would be. And so the first step would be to remove the old finish. And so I've got my random orbit sander here with a 60 grit disc. This is the coarsest I could find in this size. And I'm only going to be doing a very small patch of the floor here just to see how it turns out, and also to give me an idea of how much time would be involved in doing this. Now, the top veneer layer on this plywood is not very thick, but if you're just removing the existing finish and not trying to sand out any deep scratches or dings, it would take a lot of sanding to burn through that top layer. So I spent no more than 5 minutes with the 60 grit disc to get the majority of the finish off. And now I'm going to change it to a 100 grit disc and go over that area again. So after sanding, I still have these grooves in between the strips that have a little bit of stain still in there. And one way of dealing with that is to try to scrape it out. But as you can imagine, that would take a very long time. And one option that I considered early on was to restain the floor after sanding it using a proper stain this time. And here's a sample that I made. But in the end, I've decided that I don't want the floor to be dark. I would prefer a lighter color now and the simplicity of a natural finish. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm giving it a coat of water-based poly, and then I'll let that dry and lightly sand it before giving it a second coat. And even with the darker joint lines, I think it looks pretty good. And I really wish I had have done this from the beginning. Now, I think it was my brother that said to me that a floor really doesn't look finished until the trim goes on. So here I've cut a couple of pieces and painted them white to act as baseboard and put those in place. And this will give you a better idea of what it would look like when it's finished.